Here we go. And
anybody else? Patel came in.
Weaving Water. What is your name? Weaving Water. So Polly knows who's here. And Deborah just joined.
Yay.
Deborah and Miracle Worker.
Deborah and Linda.
Linda. Deborah and Linda. All right. Okay, it's all yours.
Well, this is the time that we create coherence by doing a little induction and a few minutes of meditation together. And the purpose of it is that to create coherence, to have a sense of this gathering, this one mind, this one heart. And so if you'll just relax, and whatever method or whatever you use to come home to yourself, come home to your heart. We'll close our eyes, turning inward, going deeper on an inhale. And on the exhale, just allowing this space to open. And again, on an inhale. Exhaling, going deeper and opening into the spacious, awake awareness that is Source, that is the One. I am that. We live and breathe and have our being from this space of awake awareness that's consciousness, out of which everything arises, including these body minds. This space is not contained within this body mind. This body mind is contained within this space. It is the awake awareness, the one I am. As we dwell here in these few minutes together, we can allow ourselves to explore just through using our attention to realize that this is infinity and that this is eternity. So there's no time, space here that limits or prescribes. It's the opening, the sense of this verdant, vital, effulgent, awake awareness. It's the experience of this space is where we come home to, and everybody knows it. It's what we are referring to when we say I. Whatever else the conditions or the configuration of personality or body mind, when we say I, this is it. Last week I spoke of the literal reveal of the one I am. When Moses asked the burning bush, what is your name? And from that burning bush, that which represents this space of awake awareness, the reply came, I am that I am. And in that moment, we had access to a literal understanding of true nature. But being the human minds that we have tended to identify with, we construed that in a way that kept us from the great reveal of the one I am. And so as we gather in this spacious awake awareness now, we know the vitality, we know the essence of what this is, out of which everything emerges, the consciousness without objects, the consciousness available, always saying yes to whomever we are being, whomever you take yourself to be. This vital field, this quantum field responds with yes and creates a reality. So we have the opportunity here to become clear, not identified with limitations, but present and in love. And so it is. It's such an amazing thing to have the experience and the realization that that space, even when it's cluttered with objects, right? That inner space that is who we all are is the same, exact same for everybody. We clutter it with different objects like thought forms or fears or whatever. But when all of that subsides, when all of that is dispelled, that spacious, awake awareness, that consciousness leaves us in awe. Leaves us in awe and wonder at the nature of this reality and the possibility of creating not from fear, but from love, and the experience of that as connection and peacefulness and freedom, and all of what, in fact, we already are as awake awareness. It's also amazing to me that the opportunity now in this reality is to share that in all of these ways through technology and through direct connection and the acknowledgement in ones like us, when we meet others, that we offer something, an opening into connection that before we did this work, at least in my case, wasn't really available. So this is the experience of oneness, of thou art, I am that, thou art that. And that is the scintillating, exuberant aliveness of awareness, of consciousness. There isn't anything else. The reason that we've experienced the 10,000 things is because our mind can assert that, and then it shows up in our movie, right? I used to call the work that I do becoming lucid in the dream. And the analogy for me between this apparent external reality and a nighttime dream was so precise. I had the insight that it was exactly the same, that in that nighttime dream, there's nothing there but one's own mind. And yet we have these scenarios and these dramas and these interactions with a dozen people. We have the experience of a bodily injury in our dream time. So then we wake up on the side of the bed and say, wow, thank God that was a dream. And then we turn into our real life where we're creating the same kind of shit. Right? It's like, I'm falling down again. I didn't do it right. I've got a problem. So realizing that this is also a dream time. And it's interesting, in some cultures like the Aboriginals in Australia, they talk about it as that, the dream time. So realizing that our participation in this comes from ourselves as source in the matter of all of it. It doesn't have any place else. There ain't no out there, right? It's like, it doesn't have any place else to be sourced except our consciousness. And our consciousness is varyingly distorted or clear. And then our world shows up as that. Earlier in a session today, I was talking with someone about the double slit experiment and the reveal out of that the experimenter's consciousness measuring, in the case of that double slit experiment, measuring a light wave turned it into a photon or materiality, right? And that's what we're doing all the time. We observe, we see something, and then it creates, because of our observation, fundamentally the frequency of our observation. So when we are coming from fear or lack and we observe, the quantum field, which is all, that's where we were just now together, we bring that information into that field, we have that reality showing up. It's not as linear as I just expressed it, because that's not the nature of reality, which is holographic, but that's the go of it. That's the mechanism that's at work. Consciousness creates by its position, its conclusion, and the frequency of that being input into the quantum field. So when we talk about creating our reality, that's not in regard to encouraging egoism. I've always resisted you create your own reality for that reason, but it is to point to the way in which that actually works. So who you're being all the time, and as I always say, who you're being to yourself carries a frequency with it.
Sorry.
I think are we off now?
No, I just was trying to be fancy. For that.
Yeah. So this morning, when I was thinking about our time together today, the thing that was uppermost for me was the experience of and the conversation around awake awareness, the conversation around that field, that quantum field out of which everything arises, the miracle of that, and the mechanism that's at play there, so that we start to be understanding who I'm being, not what I'm saying, not how I'm behaving, but who I take myself to be. And if it's fear-based or if it's limited, then that's my participation in this reality. You know, we've talked often in this group and in the other groups, the other sanghas here in this part of Maui, about redreaming this reality and about shifting the frequency that actually creates this reality. And that takes each of us individually as being unwilling to believe that there's a problem. We can't do that by our will, but we can create more and more space around what we think of as a problem so that it has more access to this scintillating kind of arising love energy frequency, the higher octave of love. This is not the human love, but it has more access to that so that the problem starts to be softened and revealed as something that's come to pass. It's just moving. It's moving. Everything is moving. The minute that you resist anything, you've stopped it in its tracks, and you have created now I'm not trying to have a guilt trip here, but you've created a block in the field. Actually, that's what we always do. That's what we do. Yeah. We believe it's just about us, and I'm in resistance to this thing that shouldn't have happened to me anyway. Right? It's just my thing. Well, it's not. I mean, this is the reality of the oneness that is the true nature of the field that we just explored and experienced together, is that it's one, and we are that. And whoever we're being, that's how this reality, the collective reality, came to be so caught in duality, so limited by judgment. So the work that I do, that we do together here, has to do with undoing the most fundamental judgment, which is self-judgment, which is always what's being projected. So when I look out through the distortion field of my self-judgment, I have a judgment on what they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, on what they're doing that's limiting reality or whatever, right? But the minute that we do the work, that through forgiveness, our self-judgment falls away, then that distortion field has cleared, and we simply see this is what's happening. There isn't any judgment there. Because of that clarity, the behavior, the action that we then find available to us is of a whole different order than when we had the judgment projected onto the out there and the resistance that brings up. So that's what came up for me today for our time together. And anything, any topic or any question that anybody has, I want to feel that for you. But I think the most important thing is if you can come to this place where you acknowledge and know yourself as awareness having this whatever, the object of a limitation, whether it's relational or financial or whatever, is that the difference between who I am and what I have becomes so prevalent for you that the who I am takes precedence, that the who I am is primary. No longer the idea of the limited self, I've got a problem or I'm not good enough, but now this is the one I am, and I have this. I still can see that limitation, but in seeing that, I'm allowing it to dissipate. I'm allowing it to move on. I know it if I can see it, the witness being the opening into awareness, that I am not that. It's what I have. And that distinction for me has been like, that's the catalyst for the shift. That's the catalyst for the shift out of fear and into love. In other words, out of a projected idea that the external is the cause and the matter of my experience, which is the fundamental conclusion out of our victim identity. Either he, she, or it is the cause of my experience. And the coming home to knowing myself as the space in which everything arises without judgment, without the idea that it should be different than it is. Because as we start to participate at that frequency, then life is connecting to us. And I think I used that statement from Unity Church last week. Interestingly enough, I have a story about that. The poster that says, "It's your Father's great pleasure to give you the kingdom." The quantum fields in true response always. I think attributing pleasure to it would be a little overreach, but that's okay. I have one client who has a nonprofit where she goes to Kenya every year for sure. And she said, we were talking about this issue, this way in which the quantum field responds to who we're being. And she said to me, I use that quote, "It's your Father's great pleasure to give you the kingdom." And she said, in the mud huts in Kenya, every family has that on their wall. So it's like reality shifting, and reality, the appearance of a reality, and our idea of what's correct or what's best or what's good. It's like, give it up, right? It's like, relax, you know.
So if anyone has a question or a topic they'd like to discuss, I sent this out in the email, but Polly can't see your expressions if you have a quizzical expression on your face or like, I don't get something. So you really have to speak up and show up for her to be able to respond to you. If you have a question on Zoom, please use the reaction button and raise your hand so I can pin you and we can all see you. And if you're here, you can just raise your hand.
Or just start talking.
Vanessa, is that a hand? No. Okay. No, definitely not.
Well, thank you, Polly, for a beautiful discourse. And I just a question about dream time. I heard years ago that 80% of our dreams are negative, that we're dealing with nightmares half the time. Do you find that to be true? Is that just hearsay or?
Oh, are you talking to me personally or for the
Just
collective?
in general.
No, in general, I do think that it's true because of so much that we've repressed, and it has a bit of an access during dream time.
Right.
And we can also kind of camouflage it during dream time in a certain way, so that something that we might not want to have consciously revealed to us comes to us in the dream time. So I think it's kind of a safety factor of sorts. But the dreams are interesting in that way. You know, my favorite kind of simplistic dream interpretation was to consider everything in the dream to be oneself. So that if you're having an oppositional interaction in a dream, to know yourself as both sides of it. Yeah, so I think dreams are really helpful in that way.
It's where you go to work out all your emotional stuff.
Right. And being aware that that's true. Sometimes that can be, you can become lucid in the dream, but even after you wake up, if you approach it that way, then it can be, you know, beneficial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Thank you, Laura. It's so great that all of you are enlightened.
The company we keep.
Yeah, so Deborah has her hand raised. Want to unmute yourself, Deborah?
Aloha, Polly, and every.
Aloha, sweetheart.
This is Linda with Deborah,
Ah,
and of course, I just wanted to observe because this is my first time.
yay.
Actually, it's my second time. Excuse me, but I very much had a very pleasurable experience, and the only way I can. Well, I just want to talk about it. I was in the experience of feeling a lot of love, and I spontaneously wanted to start praying. Not praying is, I don't know what other word, but I was feeling love for others. And I was not, that distinction of not being in my mind, but being in my heart. And it's just interesting because I don't find myself doing that in these moments when meditating or being together. But I was so moved tonight to have this opening. And I hear you talking about this place of we're moving towards love and not being in not just thinking about things and being in our consciousness, but moving towards this place of holding one another and loving one another. And that's as much as I can say about it. And
Yeah. Well, it feels so good because it is our home. It's our true nature. And the mind has taken us into polarity and into opposition often, into concern and into worry. But our nature, our true home is that. It's that relaxing into, that softening. You know, that the book that Jerry Jampolsky published years ago out of A Course in Miracles called Love is Letting Go of Fear. You know, it's that releasing out of and into our home. You know, it's not like we have to create a good end of the stick. We don't have to create an other opportunity that fear is the opposition to. No, it's all, that's what's true. And fear is the aberration, right? Fear is the aberration out of our sense of having to get something or avoid something to be okay. So when we go back to what and somehow today I'm referring to the titles I used to use for the work I do. One of them, one time, was core self-concept. Because what I realized was that everybody has had a kind of core installation of a conclusion about themselves that's been running the show. And that's what, as it unfolded over the last decade or so, I came upon the 6 Steps to Freedom process, which is a way to take you into what it is that is at the core of your idea of yourself, because that frequency is unavoidably, inevitably one of fear. And it took away our ability, because it magnetized us into an external reality where we had to be good, or we had to be appropriate, or we had to show up. And all of the adaptive behaviors that we created coming out of that, when it took us there, we left ourselves. It was like a self-abandonment. It was not, the journey home is not a journey. It's a simple turning back to one's own heart, to one's own self, to the love that you are, which is what you expressed, Linda. That, thank you for that. Yeah, it's such a natural place to be. You know, in the human mind, because the human mind is created both in duality and in fear, there's no solution there. You know, the best you're going to ever do is to come up with maybe a communication technique, or maybe a behavior that you think is a good behavior. But none of that is needed coming from your true nature. You don't have to figure out how to be a good person. You are already the awake awareness in which a reality arises. And that frequency is one of what I call the higher octave of love. It's benign love, it's objective love, but it's power. It's for me, when it first occurred to me, it sounded like some kind of universal tone. Maybe it was the Om. I don't know. I didn't know about Om at that point, but it was like this profound frequency, and it was love, and it was beyond the mind's grokking it. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. Mm. Thank you.
Somebody's here. I see a hand. I saw the hand.
Camry.
Hi, Camry.
What, how to approach judgment, especially like, because certain judgments, I guess like about your own situation or, the life that you've been given can be easier to overcome than like a judgment that's like a self-judgment. And so I was wondering like, how do you go about approaching like self-judgment?
Well, thank you, sweetheart. Yeah, the whole direction of the 6 steps to freedom, which I'll go over briefly, it never hurts to repeat them. It's when you're triggered, the reason you're triggered is because it's tapping on something that a self-judgment, basically, something that you believe about yourself. I mean, if somebody says to somebody who doesn't have a judgment about their appearance, you don't look that great today, they don't get triggered, right? But if somebody says that to a person who's very invested in their appearance, and that triggers them, then that trigger, the reason they're triggered is because it matches the frequency of an earlier self-judgment. So the 6 steps to freedom have to do with using being triggered to get to what you concluded. And for many people, it can be pre-verbal. It's going to happen early on. It may be, well, this is a whole nother arena, but it may be past life too. But it's a conclusion that you reach about yourself, like I'm not important or I don't matter, right? That gets repressed into the subconscious. When anything's repressed, it's going to be projected. And so now we're projecting, we are seeing things, I call it the distortion field, but we're seeing what's going on out here and receiving what people say and what we hear through the field of, I'm not good enough. Yeah. So whenever we get triggered, we have access to going to that early wound, and through the alchemy of forgiveness in this protocol, to allow that to be resolved, to see that that was the conclusion of a 3-year-old and it was never true. And so there's that piece to what you're pointing to. In terms of dealing with judgment, all judgment, this is a kind of, it's very simplistic in a way, but it has reality to it, a core of truth to it. All judgment is self-judgment, because if you don't have any self-judgment, you're just looking at what's going on. Does that make sense to you? Like you're just seeing what's happening and it's just what's happening. But if you have judgment, like I'm good, I'm bad, and you're seeing what's going on through that lens, then you're going to be judging that it shouldn't be that way. Yeah? Does it make sense? So it's a great understanding to start to get that our self-judgment is what's, I used to use a quote from a spiritual teacher. All judgment is self-judgment. All criticism is self-criticism. And when you get that, you will extend to yourself a love that will be the light of your world. So it's like, understanding. I mean, what I'm seeing through a distortion here, and it looks like, oh my God, I can't believe what she's doing. Yeah. Well, it's like, come home, come back, feel the feeling, because I can't understand what she's doing is a kind of trigger, right? And it can take you into where you've been caught, because when that clears, whatever you see, you will be available to be in response to it that doesn't have a fear base. That was a lot, Camry. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
So when one works with the 6 steps and you arrive at a place where you see that you have been having like fear of missing out, FOMO, like I'm not invited to the party,
Right.
kind of energy, so I've been able to take that back to my teens a number of times, but that still persists in my reality. FOMO is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's going to be in layers, and it's going to be in different different degrees. It's going to have different intensity to it, but it's always going to be an opening into seeing that if that's what your experience is, you've got a belief about yourself, right? And you do this work really well, Lily.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it is going to be in layers, and it'll keep showing up until it's clear in you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the other possibility is that when you don't get invited, you just feel like you're spared, right? Because that's what's probably true.
Could you go over the 6 steps?
Yes.
No, the question was for those who couldn't hear, could you go over the 6 steps?
So the 6 steps basically are a way for us to use a trigger in current time to reveal to us what we've believed early on that got repressed. The first step is I'm upset or I'm triggered, acknowledging that. The second step is one that sometimes gets resisted, which is the acknowledgement that what's going on is about me. And that can be understood in a lot of ways. It's like I used to say to people, have you noticed whenever you have a problem that you're there? It's like that kind of understanding. It's like, it's about me is because you're experiencing that. Whatever they did or whatever it looked like, you can acknowledge that it's about me because it's your experience. You were triggered. The third step is to name the feeling in that trigger. Like in the FOMO thing, it's like the feeling of, what might that be, Lily?
Oh, sadness.
Sadness.
And self-worth, all to do with not being invited to the party.
Right, not included.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so the feeling might be not being good enough or not included. That's the feeling. The fourth step is to, just through free association, to come into the memory of the earliest time that you can recall in which you felt that same way. And it might have been when you were 4 years old and nobody showed up for your birthday party, or it can be anything. But the thing about it, finding the earlier time is likely to be, it's probably not going to be the earliest time, and that's not totally important, but to find the time when you experience that, because that was a part of that getting installed into your subconscious. So then when you remember that it was because nobody showed up for your 4th birthday party or you didn't get invited, then you look to see, what did you believe that meant about you? Because that's what you're really looking for. You're looking for the identity conclusion when you experienced being rejected or left out or whatever. And so it can go and when you sink in, and again, it's through free association and just allowing, being with that memory and seeing what that little person believed it meant about him or her. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not included. There's something wrong with me. You know? And when you see what you concluded about yourself, the sixth step is to forgive yourself for ever having believed something that was never true, but was unavoidable. So it's like allowing that something really did happen and that you concluded something unavoidably for that 4-year-old. There wasn't any, she couldn't understand, or he couldn't understand all the circumstances that resulted in him not being included or nobody showing up. But the unavoidable conclusion that he reached was that it was about me, because as we are in our first 7 years, the entire world is about me. If mommy and daddy are fighting, it's about me. It means something about me. And out of that, we create adaptive behaviors. So those are the 6 steps. And I think that they get mailed or.
Yeah, they should show up on the email.
But it's the best protocol I've ever found for coming to the core self-concept, the conclusion about oneself that's been, it is exactly like it's installed like a program in a computer. And it just has all kinds of ramifications, and it shows up in many ways. So accessing it is to get triggered. That's why I often say that getting triggered is like gold. It's going to take you to cause in the matter, what you're believing about yourself that is emitted and then shows up in your world. You're looking at me?
Yeah, there's a chat here, a private chat. Someone's in a very hang on, I'm doing something fancy here again. There we go. Someone's in a noisy cafe and they're typing their question. So it's about partnerships or choosing to be in a specific type of relationship, to be in a specific type of relationship with another human being, and the conflicts created by needs, wants, promises, expectations in service of this common goal of being together. What can you recommend in terms of letting go of disappointment, frustration, when the other person you're in a relationship with presents you with opportunities to not get what you want, need, or were promised? And then she wrote, other than letting go of the person, LOL.
Right. Well, the person that you can let go of is your idea of you're being a person, right? That's a high bar, but that's the thing. It's like whenever we have these facets of this identity complexity, all of the different woundings and the different ways in which we believe that we are, basically every one of them is going to come to some kind of victim status, some kind of victim identity. And so in relationship, the opportunity is to come into authenticity. And it's a really high bar, and it's really scary, because the very thing that we created as adaptive behaviors were in response to what we could no longer be, which was we could no longer be authentic and still take care of mommy or be good to daddy or deal with whatever. We had to create an adaptive behavior. So in relationship, the possibility of authenticity is the highest possibility, and it's in my mind, it's the purpose of relationship, because you being fully open and available and forthcoming with no hidden thoughts and no people pleasing in relationship. It can create, it's like 2 or more gathered in my name, 2 in agreement about the purpose of the relationship. And when you're triggered, you use the 6 steps to see what it is you're believing about yourself, because that is information, like I was talking about at the beginning today. That's information into the quantum field that's going to create a dynamic in your reality. So it's a great opportunity, not for the faint-hearted, we should say, but it's the opportunity to use the dynamic of the relationship to get in touch with your own woundedness and to do the work there. And then if 2 people are in agreement about doing the work and seeing their part in what's apparently not wrong, that apparently is wrong or not working, then it's a great thing. Yeah. The purpose of relationship is to wake up to your true nature, and then have the fun of being with an apparent other. Yeah.
We have about 10 more minutes before we go into meditation. Any other topics or questions for
Well,
Polly?
I'm curious about, I heard that we changed the frequency that's the base for music to, I think it's 244 a few years ago, that it used to be 432 was the perfect harmonic. And then something in our world changed the harmonic. And it became our standard in our base of the music. And I wonder if that was a sabotaging event, or what do you think that would do to the reality?
That's this girl don't know nothing about that. But it's an interesting piece. Yeah. Frequency clearly is what it's all about. So this collective is caught in dualism. That was what we call the fall. The mind is caught in duality, good and bad, right and wrong. And that is a particular frequency. And my suspicion is I don't have any confirmation of this. My suspicion is that the frequency of duality is underpinned by a frequency of fear. But I don't have any support for that. But the duality itself is like, Einstein said there's no solution for the problem at the level, the frequency, the problem is created. And so it's like, and we get caught on that stick, but we just want the good end of the stick, right? I think Krishnamurti said the only difference between me and you is that I don't mind what happens, right? And it's like, so I'm not looking to get always the good end of the stick. And so I'm not subject to that polarity. So we go meta to the stick, and that is a frequency of connection and freedom and peacefulness. It's not caught in duality. And that's the shift out of fear that we go through when we drop the idea of being a person who's got to get something or avoid something to be okay, even if it's just an invitation to the party. So the freedom is from the duality, and in that opening is profound, because it's like, and the other thing that it does, which is another topic that we all like to play with, is that it puts us right here, right now, the only place we actually ever are. But because of the mind's insistence on a past and a future, we get taken out of where true north is, which is the frequency of connection and love. And we're caught up in our mind with regret or guilt, or with fear and longing for our future. So the present moment is the foundation of the awakened state. And besides knowing ourselves as I am, we could also know ourselves as now, because that's what's always only. We are only always that. Now is, you can't, this is it. And it doesn't go like train tracks in a linear sequential way. It is a rising and overflowing, like a tube torus, like the toroidal field of consciousness. And it's always this. And it's a mind boggler, because the mind will keep grabbing hold of past, future, and in doing that, take themselves out of the only point of connection with their true nature, which is now. This is it. What is it? Whatever it is, and the mind doesn't have much to grab hold of. But the minute that it's my favorite quote from Katie, when you want to be in, if you want to be in terror, get a future, right? Like, or if you want to be in guilt and shame, get a past. So the fullness of this eternality is that's the place where who I am resides, and fullness and love.
Do we have time for one more, Robin? Just a quickie.
Yeah.
I would like your comments on something that Ram Dass has said often, especially around being triggered, is he says, love your thoughts. Just love your thoughts. Now, do you see that as a bypass to going into the 6 steps? Or do you think maybe that's a solution?
No, I think it's a way to be, especially maybe the trigger is not strong enough to take you into feeling triggered, but you can feel the dissonance in your thinking. And the minute you put the light on that and allow it for whatever it is, it's already been shifted by your conscious awareness. And that's what I think he was pointing to. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That could be.
Yeah. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you so much.
They're great to be together. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Rotel, should we just take a little break before we go into meditation?
We have a 4-minute break before we go into meditation, and so that you all can easily drop out if you don't want to sit for 45 minutes.
Good night, Mama Polly.
Good night, sweetheart. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Julie. Love you guys.
Love you.
Sorry, I walked in late. I went to the old address and I couldn't find.
You got here.
I know. I sat there and I've got to have this address somewhere.
All right.
So I'm so glad you got
Sorry.
it. How long ago did you get this?
I came probably right after the meditation. I
Oh,
think,
great.
because this was, I don't know how long, it was about 3.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking to me. Not a problem. Not a problem.
I'm wondering if anybody could give me a ride. I live down near, the Colony Elementary School. Cause my daughter and husband wanna go, but I'd like to stay.
I'll take you home, darling.
Thank you.
If anybody wants, I have cards over here in the basket. If you don't have my number and you want to get me in touch. And the card's got a great message anyway.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Who is that? That's Les.
How you doing?
Hi, honey.
Have you had more ozone treatments?
I've had one with 2 passes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna be on a regular schedule after the first.
Is the name Alan Clements ringing a bell to you?
Oh, yeah.
So he's, I'm helping him his last show. He's got the show scheduled for the theater. January 28th.
Oh, for where is it gonna be?
Now theater. in
Oh,
West-
yeah, of the author.
So I'm gonna be reserving some seats. You can go online, see, it'll also be broadcasting at Zoom, but it's also gonna be live. Because 5 days later, he's gonna go to LA, and then if he passes certain tests, he's gonna go through surgery. See if he can extend life.
What's his condition? I knew it was.
He has a highly enlarged aortic aneurysm that can come at any moment.
Yeah, I came upon Alan when he was on Kauai, and that was years and years ago. But he's really impressive.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you and I'll have a date or something to go to that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I'll get you a ticket if you. like.
Great, I'd love that. Thank you. Thanks, sweetheart.
Well, let's talk about this after. Let's go ahead and go into meditation. We can talk about it after. We'll take care of that. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so we're gonna go into 45 minutes of silent meditation. Anything else you want to say, Polly?
No, thank you all for coming and yeah.
Enjoy.
And yay. Yeah. You setting the timer? So we'll just drop in together into that field. A sense of the awake awareness, the quantum field that is the space out of which everything arises and always available for us to just relax into. And what a gift it is, this space. And like I said before, my goal with our time together is for this space to become primary, so that it's everything, and then we're in our body mind unit hopping around in this 3D reality. Yeah, but that knowing of that vital, scintillating, effulgent space is always that, and here we go, doing our thing. Because then you're underpinned with love. So good. Aloha, everyone.
Hello.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you so much, Polly.
Oh, sweetheart, thank you.
See you later.
Love you.
Love you so much.